Hey guys, how are you doing? It's been 8 days of travel since we talked to you last. We were in Destin when we made the last update video. We went from there to Gulf Shores to Gulfport and then New Orleans. So we actually had really good weather. We had to wait for a day while we were in Gulf Shores, kind of watch it. And then we actually went from Gulfport over to New Orleans, which was the scene of our really bad weather when we were going eastbound. So coming back westbound, we actually had nice weather that day. It was a really smooth ride.
Yeah, we were like two horses headed to the barn. We were one night. We were making really good time, and then we got to New Orleans and we hit the locks and slowed us down just a little bit. So the first lock we went through was Industrial Lock, and all the total time that we waited to get through the Industrial Lock was 6 hours. So we were just in this little area, and we have a video showing kind of the area that we were looking at the whole time for 6 hours. We just spun around in circles and then we tied off. But you can see there's a little alligator that floated across, and we kind of entertained ourselves with the alligator. And it was kind of frustrating, but anyway, we finally got through the Industrial Lock and we headed over to the Harvey Lock. And by the time we got to the Harvey Lock, it was curfew time. So curfew time is, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so curfew is from 3:30 in the afternoon till about 6 p.m. And they do that so they don't have to open the bridges for car traffic during rush hour. So we got through the industrial lock, and we had to run upriver about 6 miles to the Harvey Lock. We got there at 3:20, and the guy was like, "Hey, I don't have enough time to let you through," and but the out and I said, "Well, is there anywhere for us to tie off?" He said, "No, not really." So
We're on the Mississippi.
we're on the Mississippi River. Uh, so anyway, he said, "Hey, but the Algiers lock is open. They don't have a curfew," which was another basically 10 miles downriver from where we were. And it's funny. So all these guys were on the same radio VHF station, and so I was letting the guy at the Harvey lock know. I said, "Well, I'd been here sooner if I hadn't waited for 5 hours at the industrial lock," and I guess they all kind of got a kick out of that. So we ran the basically 10 miles back downriver, and pretty rough river actually. That was some of the biggest waves and things we went through were actually on the Mississippi River on this side of the trip.
Yeah.
Um, we went by a couple of like a cruise ship and things like that, running up and down the Mississippi, back and forth basically by the Cafe Du Monde and downtown New Orleans. So anyway, we go pulling into the Algiers lock, and I tell the guy, "Hey, the lock master, hey, I'm here, whatever." You give your name and all that stuff. He says, "Hey, sorry, those other guys are on a curfew. I think I might have one that's going to last until 9 o'clock." And I was like, "You've got to be kidding!"
On the radio, he said, "You got to be kidding."
He goes, "Yes, I am." So he was, because he was listening
funny.
to us and our troubles, he was just kind of messing with us. So anyway, we were able to tie up there and make it through that lock without any real issues. But then it's like a little after 4 o'clock, something like that, when we got through the Algiers lock, and we're headed to Homa for the night. We got to make it down there, and that's probably another 50 miles or so from there. So we had to move it pretty good to get down there, and we got to Homa, which is right between the two bridges there, just at dark, so like 8 o'clock, and we tied up. But because we'd been there before, we kind of knew what to do, and it was really pretty smooth for that evening.
Yeah, uneventful. And then we got to, we left there, headed to Morgan City, and we got to another lock. And this time the lockmaster said, we're closed until 12, and I think it was like 10:30. He said, "We're closed till 12. Just hang out." So we hung out. We just kind of spun around in that little area waiting for the lock to get repaired. And then total of 3 hours later, we got to get through that lock. But we found a bypass, but it would have taken us an hour to get through the bypass, so we know better next time going if they're closed.
Yeah, it's kind of like you said, what I call it, the American Airlines, where it's the death of a thousand cuts, where they tell you like flights delayed 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. That was kind of the way the lock was. If they had told us originally that it was going to be a couple hours, we would have just gone around the bypass and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But as it was, we waited, and we went through. But once we got through, it was an easy pass. I think we actually might have floated through. I can't even remember if we had to tie up or float through, but it was an easy pass on that lock once it was open. And then it's only a couple miles more to Morgan City. So we pull in there. We had stayed there once before. But when we got up to the docks, there was a sailboat where we had tied up before, so we went a little bit further north on the dock and tied up. But there's these pylons that are basically 3 pylons together that are up against the dock. So, and Anita's probably, she'll have a picture
Yeah,
so you can see it, whatever. But it's basically the dock, a wall, and then those pylons. So the boat can only get as close as those pylons to the dock. So it was about a 4 or 5 foot gap across there. And there was this restaurant we wanted to go to, but because we got held up, we got there so late they closed. They're only open till 2 o'clock or something like that. So we missed that restaurant in downtown Morgan City. But Anita couldn't have gotten off the boat anyway.
No, I'm 5'2", and it was like 4 foot spread.
Yeah,
so.
she couldn't make it across there. I was able to actually climb up on top of the pylons and then kind of slide down the other side with a few splinters to show for it. So anyway, but
then
she
you
was
had to
stuck
climb
there.
back up. So yeah, we just stayed on the boat that night. We didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. So next morning we were up and off to Shell Morgan. Which was a pretty peaceful ride, smooth, except when we got down there, there was a pretty strong south wind blowing, and this pier, and we were going to get fuel and then dock for the night. And that Shell Morgan is on the north side of the intercoastal waterway right there. So as I went to turn in, it was just like there was 3 guys on the dock trying to help Anita with lines, and it was blowing so hard. And even with the thrusters, we couldn't move it over there. So I ended up having to spin the boat around and go in bow first. And they were able to actually pull us over into the dock so we could get fuel. And then we were able to ease it across to the other side and let the wind aid us a little bit. It was still a little tricky getting in on the other side. But
Yeah.
Mr. Morgan there that owns the Shell Morgan, one of the brothers, very nice, very helpful.
Yeah.
Gave us a lot of information. I think Anita talked to him the whole time I was getting fuel, which was probably almost an hour. They were having a nice conversation. So anyway.
Yeah, very nice man. And we got there's a man there named Will who used to own a hardware store, but hurricanes had gotten him so many times and rebuild. He finally closed that. So we got a ride. He does like Uber kind of, or just like taxi service. So we got a ride from him. Really nice guy. Gave us a tour of Abbeville, and we ate at Shucks. So if you're ever in the area, great restaurant, and then he's really good at giving tours. So
Yep, it was very nice.
all right, so we left Shell Morgan the next morning pretty early. We went through Lee Bowman Lock, no problems. We floated through that one, so that was great. We were making really good time, and John was doing something on his phone. I said, hey, do you want me to drive for a minute while you're doing whatever you're doing on your phone? He said, sure. So I sat down, and we were going like 8, and I was like, I'm going to bump this up just a little bit. We're going to go a little bit faster. Stop looking at me. and then all of a sudden, this weird noise, and the engines tried to shut down, and all kinds of stuff was going haywire. I was probably going 9 or 10, and I just jumped up and said, "Hey, you can have it." And he's like, "What'd you do?" We're like, "I don't know, but it's dying. Like the boat's dying." And
You've never seen somebody abandon the helm any faster than she did. She's like, "It's yours. You can have it." Anyway, when I looked at it, she was actually on the ground. So
I ran aground.
So we
I
were
ran in
actually
mud.
right in the middle of the intercoastal waterway. Don't know how that happens. I guess they get shoaling sometimes or whatever. So she ratted up on the mud, and when she had revved the engine, she threw mud and actually little fish all up on the swim platform. And so I basically just took it off the idle, and we were able to ease off of it. And then she actually reported it to, I guess,
Waterway guy.
Waterway
They put
guy,
alerts out there.
so they can let other people know.
He didn't
about
believe me
that
either. He
spot.
said, "Well, what's your draft? Were you on the side of?" His name's Ted. He's the one that kind of filters some of the alerts that travelers put on there. He said the Coast Guard's reporting shoaling on the side, and I said I was right in the middle. Like we were right in the middle. I had to send him a picture of proof. So
Yeah,
here's the
she
picture
was.
of what. Here's the picture that we took when we got to our next marina. Kind of a little bit about the mud and the little fish.
Yeah, so we made it through there, and our last lock of the trip actually was the Bayou Buff lock, probably. No, it's the Calcasieu lock. The Calcasieu lock there. And it's just a little bit outside of Lake Charles, and so we made it to that one. And there's actually a bridge right before it that's a swing bridge. So I called the bridge operator, and actually first I called the lock master, and he said, "Hey, just come through the bridge and just hang out, and then I'll get you through." And so then I called the bridge lady, and she's like, "Yeah, have you talked to the lock master?" "Yep, this is what he told me to do." She said, "Sounds good." So we go through the bridge. She opens it up for us, and then he's like, "Hey, just follow this this barge through. We'll just let you go." So a barge pulls through, and then I have to follow this barge through there. And the prop wash behind a barge is pretty significant if you think about the big engines and how much water they're pushing. And I'm in a little bitty narrow lock channel, so it's like a big giant river of water coming at me. It's kind of like when you you see rivers in the mountains and they narrow up, how the rapids get much faster and deeper.
Whatever
That's
they're-
what it's kind of like following a barge through there. But I was able to meander through and kind of keep it off the walls and straight, but it was pretty interesting trying to stay behind him with all this prop wash. But we made it, and that was our last lock of the trip.
Yay! I said we
is pretty
should open
nice.
a bottle of champagne, but we waited until we got home for that.
Yeah, so from there we pulled into Lake Charles. It's about 8 miles upriver off the Intercoastal at the Golden Nugget Resort. Beautiful little marina as far as the slips go. We were the only boat in there. There were floating docks. It was nice and calm and peaceful. And they were well set up. So that was a pleasurable stay for that night.
Yeah, we cleaned the boat. We had to clean the mud and the little fish off the boat.
Yeah, I had to spend some time washing the boat.
The next morning we left there. We found a good weather window. We're trying to beat all the weather we've been having in the southern part of the United States has caused some flooding, and so Intercoastal Waterway wasn't always real calm. So anyway, we were watching Galveston Bay and trying to watch Sabine Pass, and we found a window and we thought we could make it. We got to Sabine Pass and we had to go get some fuel, so we went down to the southern part of Sabine Pass to Sabine Pass Port Authority to get fuel, and that was a little bit of a nightmare. What took about 2
Yeah,
days?
well, the whole ride that day, normally we would make it in 2 days, but because it was about 140 miles or so, we were just like, hey, let's make it today. Let's get home. And the weather looks good to pass Galveston. So we get down there we're close to the Gulf, so the winds are up about 25 plus, and there's this little narrow cut I have to pull in to the marina to get fuel. And the first time I was actually going in there, it was going to push me over into the wall because I was going kind of slow. So I had to turn around and do it again to let the wind kind of work with me. And I get in there and it's a hard right turn, and there's a boat at the fuel dock. So as I turn around, I had to stop and wait on him. And he pulled out of the way, but I was actually I think I bumped the wall a little bit on the backside.
We bumped the wall.
With the tinder touched the wall.
It almost fell off his caddy.
She makes a big deal of it. But anyway, it was pretty rough in there. So we turn around, and then there's a.
Can I tell this part?
Yeah.
There's a guy on the pier. So everywhere we've been at the fuel dock, there have been people that help. They grab the lines. They hand you the fuel nozzle thing, whatever. And so we're battling the wind and current in this little tight area, and this guy's chomping down on a sandwich. He said, "Y'all gonna get fuel?" And I said, "Yes." And I thought, oh goodness, he's gonna help. And he got in his boat and left, and there was nobody. And so a guy who's cleaning his fish came over, and I tossed the line. It went in the water. I tossed the line again. It went in the water. Third try, we were close enough. He caught the line, and I tossed him another one. And he had the two lines bared down, trying to pull the boat over. And then I was able to jump off and tie up that last one. And then he said he had been on the water too. He knew how bad it was, and he said, "Y'all have safe travels," and he left. So it was our first self-fuel.
I would say a self-serve fuel island.
I couldn't even figure out how to open the little thing to put the card in, and a guy came over and that worked there and helped us with the rest of it.
Yeah, we finally got help with that. Got fueled up.
Crazy.
Getting out was much easier than getting in. I think the guy's name was Leaf. If you've ever met a guy named Leaf, after Leif Erikson. But anyway, nice young man helped us there. We got out, got back on the Sabine Pass, and then we had the last 90 miles to home. Got in the Intercoastal, and it was fine. We made good time. I'd say when we got the last 8 or 10 miles before we got out of the Intercoastal into the Galveston Bay, it was barge traffic everywhere. And that was probably about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of them had stopped for the day, and they're all just pushed up to the side. And when you go by one of those, we have to slow down so we don't throw our wake doesn't push water into their engine room. So we want to respect them as we go by them. But there were so many of them, it was fast, slow. And the last, what should have taken us 30 minutes, took us almost 2 hours to get past on the Intercoastal.
Yeah, and here's a picture of some of the barges that were lined up, and some additional pictures of barges just in case you don't know how big they are and what they're actually doing on the Intercoastal Waterway.
So then we turned out into the Galveston Bay. We have our last basically 20 miles to home, and you run for about 12 miles or so actually in the big ship channel. And I was following a big freighter, if you can imagine a big oil tanker that's probably, 600 feet long. It's a nice, big, huge ship, but he's running about 14 miles an hour. And so we're following him, and we're passing other barges as they go through there. I'm trying to hold back a little bit, and then he's actually meeting another tanker, and Anita's little freaked out about the waves, how big they're going to be with the I guess the wake from those two boats. But it really wasn't that bad. We were able to turn after those two passed each other and head into the channel and
it was a big wave.
come back home.
We'd have gotten really wet. We'd have taken on a lot of water. But anyway, we got back to Kemah. Clear Lake Shores, our home port, at about 5 o'clock, I guess.
About 5
Weekend
o'clock.
traffic was a little bit, caused us to slow down just a little bit. A lot of people out enjoying the water, but it was nice to get back home. And first thing we did when we got home was wash the boat and then pop that cork on that champagne to celebrate our ended up 70-day adventure. And then we had dinner with some of our dock friends here. So we're back. We have more adventures to come, and we'll be sure and document them over the summer. All right. See you.
Bye guys.